I'm going to show you how to create a nice looking histogram in Excel. First we need some data. I'm going to use the Alt-Tab button to go to a notebook file, notepad file, where I have some data that are just X data in centimeters. Select the data, Control-C, copies, and then go to some cell in Excel and Control-V, pastes. So now I have these data into Excel. To create a histogram of these data, I click on the Data tab, Data Analysis, and look for the macro called Histogram. OK. The input range is the range of my data itself, the data themselves, which is this column. And I'm going to select an output range, which is where Excel is going to write the results of this macro. So I will put that just someplace random. I want to have a chart output. OK. And there it is. Now the problem is this histogram is pretty ugly. Notice that the scale is a terrible scale with a lot of funny numbers. These columns are thin, too thin, and they're not a nice color, and there's a bunch of problems. So I'm going to redo this and make it much neater. So I'm going to create my own bins first. So I'm going to make a column called My Bins, and I'm going to make, based on the actual data range, I'm going to make my own bins, starting with 23 and then 23.2, and then I'm going to continue that increment up to 24.6. So these are going to be my bins, and now I'm going to do the histogram using those bins. So histogram input range is the same. The output range, I'm going to choose a different location. I'm going to pick right here, and I'm going to also choose my own bin range, and for that I'm going to highlight the bins that I created, and OK. And notice that now it has my bins and the frequency for each bin, and now these bins are much nicer looking. Notice that the labels aren't consistent in their format, so if I go to my bins, right-click Format Cells, and I pick a number with 1 decimal place, it changes all those numbers to be consistent. And now if I redo this histogram, data analysis, histogram, and keep everything the same, and overwrite existing data, now my axes show the proper number of decimal places. This plot is still kind of ugly, this histogram, so I'm going to make it bigger and then work on it a little bit. I'm going to right click on one of these bars and format data series. I have options for color, for example, the fill color. Click on more colors, and custom, I like solid blue, which is 0 red, 0 green, and 255 blue. You may like a different color. I can also click on here, format data series, and look at the gap width. The gap width I'm going to make smaller gap width, usually 5% is good, to leave a little bit of a gap but to make it look nicer. And when I'm done formatting, I close that. Excel automatically puts a legend called frequency, but that adds nothing to our knowledge because we already have frequency on the axis. So just highlight that and click that and delete. It also puts a title histogram up on the top. The convention is to put figure numbers and figure captions on the bottom of a chart. So this is, Excel doesn't do it right, so I'm going to delete that as well. I can add my own figure number later. I also want these numbers to be a little bit bigger, so I can just click on the axis and then the font, and I'm going to change the font numbers size to 12. Do the same thing on the y-axis. I also want to change bin to what it actually is, which is X in centimeters. And I want to make the X italic by convention. And I also want to make this this font bigger, like 14. Do the same thing with Y. Now this is frequency, so I can just right click font. I'm not going to change the title, but change the size to 14. So now I have a pretty nice looking histogram. One problem that remains is that these numbers correspond to the tick mark to their right. So the 23.4 represents this tick mark right here. So what I want to do is click on there, and in the home button, the home tab, you click on this cell which says align right, and you see that that shifts the cells over to the numbers over to closer to their tick mark. I'd like them to be directly underneath the tick mark, but I don't think that's possible in Excel. But at least they're at the right, and we can adjust the size of this histogram and make it look a little nicer, and that is what I would call a nice looking histogram.